What up, everyone? It's Ryan Wilson. You gonna eat that crust podcast. Are you a fan of spine-chilling tales, creepy creatures, and all things horror? Listen to LK the Horror Nerd. He offers in-depth reviews of movies, books, and games, exclusive interviews, and chilling discussions. That's right, folks. Check out LK the Horror Nerd, another podcast on the You Run Podcast Network. Check it out, y'all.
Welcome to the podcast.
Where someone was playing it off like it was a freestyle, and I would say, I like how you got excited. That was a dope freestyle. How long it take to write it? Then when I started going to Scribble Jam, I was like, oh shit, I'm good for DC.
What up, everybody? Welcome to the You Gonna Eat That Crust podcast. I'm your host with the most on the ones and twos. You know they call me Shed Lasso. You know they call me Fatback Supreme. You know they call me Mount Crushmore. It's your boy, Ryan Wilson. And with me tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the sweatpants overlord, follically challenged himself. It's motherfucking Greg Hoey. Greg, what's good?
What's up? Second place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going order of operations, important in arithmetic and podcasting. Also with me tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the mustard smuggler, the razor blade himself, the organized one, Sheamus Rogers. Sheamus, hello.
What up, guys? I'm just, I got to make everything work on this podcast. I do it all. I just have to, I'm always constantly tired, not getting any sleep. I'm the best.
You're the Alejandro of the podcast.
With all the editing, promoting you do, Sheamus, you must be exhausted.
I can't sleep at night.
All right, well, we're not here to sleep, Sheamus. Can you tell us why, in fact, we are here?
All right, crust lovers and carb connoisseurs. Today's episode is a slice of something special. We've got a guest who's been spitting bars sharper than a pizza cutter since the days when Napster was a thing. He's a battle rap veteran, a spoken word wizard, and one half of the legendary underground duo Educated Consumers. You might know him from his solo work like Cruel Fuel, or Live Long Enough to Learn, or maybe you caught him on tour opening for Epic Beard Men. He's a maestro of the microphone, he's introspective, he's razor sharp, and his flow, so smooth it could probably convince you that pineapple does belong on pizza. Please welcome to the pod, the man, the myth, the mic slayer, Seez Mics.
Thank you, gentlemen. So is this where I say in Crust we trust, or do we save that for the end?
We save that for the end. But...
Okay.
Say it as many times as you want, though. I'm going to cut it out and just plaster it everywhere anyway.
In Crust we trust, in Crust we trust. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being accommodating with the schedule. And it is an honor to be with you, gentlemen.
Oh,
hey, we appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you.
All right, well, I mean, fucking here we go, baby. I mean, it's such an honor to have you. It's an honor to have you. We're schlubs, okay? We I cook pizza and Greg sells tires or some shit like that. And
I delivered tires. It's tiring.
Sheamus repairs the Technodrome.
Okay.
So it's an honor to have you. We're schlubs. So we're gonna get right into it with some deep.
So am I Bebop or Rocksteady?
You're obviously Rocksteady.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Seez. So looking back to the very beginning of your journey in hip hop, what was the definitive moment or experience that truly solidified your decision to pursue music seriously?
I would say when I started to enjoy it, in terms of making it. When I was in high school, I kind of had an odd childhood in that there was sort of a duality to it. My dad was and is a pretty successful lawyer. And so money wasn't really a huge thing for us, but there was some things lacking in the household. And so I always had this desire to get out there and be sort of a performer to get the accolades that I wasn't always getting at home. So I was big into sports. big into being a class clown. And then one day I went to, and the reason I bring up the duality is I went to a high school in Maryland called Georgetown Prep, which has been in the news over the last couple of years because a couple of Supreme Court justices went there, just to give you an idea of like what that environment was like. Yeah. And oddly enough, I became friends with this kid. It was a Jesuit school, and the Jesuits are a sect of Catholicism that they do a lot of missionary work. So there was students from all over the world. One of them was this kid from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And he got me into, he was basically like, here's how you count bars. This is what freestyling means. You've heard Enter the 36 Chambers. You should rap. Right. So, and I always had sort of the, you know, all of the elements of freestyling that aren't rhyming, being able to think on the spot, say something clever every 90 seconds, those kind of things. And so I would mess around with rapping when I was.
So you're witty with the comebacks and everything.
Yeah, you know, not with my wife. I let her win every argument, but
smart man. That's safe. That's happy marriage.
Right. And so there was a point where before I met this kid, his name was Deep. He's done some production under a duo called Two Hungry Brothers. They've done a lot of stuff with Homeboy Sandman, just as a point of reference. But
nice.
Before I met him, I had sort of dabbled with writing and stuff like that. And then he really showed me how to, I guess, quantify some of the stuff that I was doing. But by the time I was 18 and getting ready to go to college and all that stuff, I was like, you know, this is fun. I don't really know what to make of it other than that I enjoy it. But then I started going down to DC, you know, from the suburb where I grew up into the city to get involved in a lot of different open mics and stuff like that. And once I started to get props from people who I really looked up to in those circles, that was the turning point for me to think, all right, this is more than just, I don't know that I'll ever make it into a career, but it's more than a hobby. But I enjoy the sense of satisfaction I get from it individually. These people that are giving me props as one of the few, if only white people that were involved in some of those freestyle ciphers, big ups to Freestyle Union. I felt like I was contributing to the environment as a whole, not just getting some out of it myself. So to answer your question, once everybody started to applaud me, that was when I thought it was the right thing to do.
Perfect timing.
Right.
Did you have it? Did you like kind of want to be the hero of the family?
No, it was just, you know, some families have, if there's like 6 things that a family needs, you know, we had like 1.5. Right? So like, I don't mean to besmirch my dad's a great guy. He just worked a lot. And in terms of stuff I wanted to do, I had to be really internally driven. There wasn't like a lot of external validation for that, which I think is sort of I've seen how it's impacted me. I'm 46 now. I'm totally over any problems I've ever had. I always had that desire to be the class clown, and it was such an innate thing. And looking back, I think it was because, I just sort of craved that within my own household. I don't know. I don't mean to like lay on the couch or anything or make it weird, but
bro, I get it. You didn't get enough hugs, right? So you started rapping, right? And I'm right there with you, man. Well, my parents hugged me. I'm fucking lying about that, but I totally get where you're coming from. Like that, for me, like the class clown, like first being the center of attention, definitely sparked something in me, and I was like, I want to do this on a bigger platform for sure.
Yeah,
I was
totally
the same way. Yeah, when I was younger, and nowadays I just find myself more of an introvert.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it sounds like you guys have had experiences with different, forms of expression and art and things like that. And if I understand correctly, one of you was the front man in a band. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. Follically challenged.
Yeah.
We've all been in groups at times.
I mean, I'm sadly in a cover band. I used to do the original thing, but nobody wants to make original music around here anymore. Right. I know you had to grab it.
It's tough to get in the bars and club. They want cover bands mostly. Nowadays, unless you're like well known.
Yeah. It's an interesting, to the point of the introvert, it's, I always had this line, introverts in disguise. It was like, pay attention. Look how cool this is. I got my money. Now leave me the fuck alone. I feel like when Sage, who you had on a couple of weeks ago, really enjoyed that interview. Big ups to him. And, I feel like he's such a good example of that, of the kind of guy that you can tell, like he really knows how to calibrate how much of himself he's willing to give to the audience. But once that's over with, he's very firm about, okay, my space now, bye.
It's probably the right way to be. I'll just throw up all over everybody.
Right. You don't want to do that. Maybe once.
Ah!
Does that get rid of your stalker, or does that like bring them on more? Like, look, I still got this shirt and I didn't wash it.
I had this one stalker that was like, just puke on me. I was like, it's weird, but okay.
Hey, we don't kink shame on this podcast anyway.
That's right.
So I read somewhere that your journey kind of started with like breakdancing, graffiti. You want to like, how important to that do you think to this day it still is to the culture? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. So to the point that I was making about hanging out with Deep, he certainly sat me down. I was like, here's how to freestyle. Here's, the instrumentals that you can going way back when people used to buy cassette tape singles. The A side was the single and then the B side was typically the instrumental. And so we would write to that. But what was big back then, what was really important to people like him was, okay, like there's I think there's 5 elements, the 5th being beatboxing to hip hop, but we're going to go to these breakdancing events, or we're going to go to these DJ battles and graffiti. I was never very good at it, but I always appreciated it. But there was a crew called Natural Elements Crew that DB came down with, and then an offshoot of that was 3 9s. So big up to 3 9s. That was a big thing in the DMV. And there was mostly breakdancers and DJs. So I would go to events and it was like, yeah, I rap, but that's not really the focal point right now. So me trying to be the center of attention, I'd be kind of playing myself. So I'm just going to hang back and watch the breakers break. I wasn't good at dancing, but I really enjoyed it. Wasn't good at DJing, but I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't for like a year or two, until I'd been hanging out with NEC and then eventually 3 9s. It was like, oh, like, I saw you sort of freestyling over there. Do you want to get up on stage? And it was a rite of passage to be involved in appreciating all those things. And it's interesting because a couple months ago, where I live in Virginia, there was a really cool, big ups to this guy named Substantial, who's based out of VA. He runs a really cool breakdancing studio not far from my house. And there was this really big B-boy, B-girl event. My kids are 8 and 6, and I took them. And they were like, are you going to rap? I was like, no, like, that's not really what this is. And we just stood there for 2 hours.
Daddy dance.
Right, daddy dance, monkey. I was like, you dance. You're a lot more pliable than I am.
Right? You'll have fun.
Right. But we just sort of stood there and we were not passive observers. We were clapping and they were shaking, they were moving a little bit and everything. But the point that I'm making to your question was, when I first got involved in hip hop, me being an MC was like tertiary to the experience, and then once I started to do shows, I think I was an interesting thing, particularly being white. Maybe being white isn't the right way to put it, but coming from a background where it was like, we have money, like everything's ours, and then you get into this environment. It's like, yo, we don't care that you rap, just enjoy the breakdancing, enjoy the DJ battle. When it's time for the MCs to shine, you're going to earn that. But for now, just hang back. And I never really had an issue with that. In fact, I always found a certain level of comfort of just being a face in the crowd, enjoying that and feeling like I was supporting something bigger than myself.
Nice.
Absolutely. Do you think it's still prevalent now as it was back? I assume it was around the mid 90s or so.
I mean, I was hoping Race Gun was going to bring it all back, but
it's a great question. It's funny because back by the time I was 15, 16, going into the city, I mean, I never wanted to be wherever I lived. I wanted to be out and involved and in the scene, in whatever that sort of meant, up until like my early 30s. And then I became like a complete shut-it, right? So I don't know. I remember there was, these huge venues down in DC, like Nations. There was a really cool event called Soul Camp that was once a week down in DC. And, it'd be hundreds, if not thousands of people at these events, people breakdancing. I don't know. I'm sure hundreds, if not thousands of people go out in DC all the time now. I don't know that they're like going to see breakdancers. I'd like to think they are, but I think that
I don't even know if people congregate in that.
Right. Yeah. They got like, full body condoms on and stuff. And
yeah, we're all worried about everything. We're all
right.
pissed off about something. And then you got to worry about like to shooters.
That's an interesting
Driving a
point
monster
too.
truck through the crowd.
Right. Yeah. Violence was there was always sort of that possibility, but there was a lot of self-policing among that community. And to whatever extent I want to say commodification, if that's the right word, of all the elements of hip hop. I mean, this was before breakdancing and DJing were like on a global radar of Pepsi. Like there was cool tapes being traded and the DMCs and all that stuff. But like, if you knew, you knew. And then eventually the shit just got sort of, blown out of proportion. But hey, there's still, when I took my kids, they weren't like, this is weird. I don't like, they heard the music, they saw the people dancing, they just hopped right to it. So, maybe I got to do a better job of I'll take them out to clubs in DC. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, more people should watch kids and just start interacting like them.
Right. Exactly.
All right, Greg, go ahead, baby.
So your artist name, Seez Mics, is pretty catchy. Can you tell us the story behind it?
Yeah, it's funny. I said I was never good at graffiti, and I'm not lying about that. For some reason, back in, I was like the early 90s, words that had 2 E's were pretty common graffiti names. And for some reason I chose Seez because I was always the type of person to seize the opportunity to rock the mic or make a joke or whatever. And then one night in college, I was playing one of those NHL live games, a video game where like you type your name in. And this is such a corny story. I used to drink Mickey's, like the little,
the little bumblebee one.
Right. So I think I was just drunk and like I started to type in C's and I just looked around and saw a Mickey's bottle and I was too drunk to get past the MIC. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool as shit. So I'd say 100% true story. I still have the email that I sent my friend that night who was going to a different school. And I was like, I came up with the coolest name. And the next day he was like, you're such a fucking loser. But I don't know if you actually said that.
It was originally when you said it was Bees Mics. But you're like,
Bees.
And then you changed it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you walk us through your typical creative process, like from the initial spark of an idea to the finished track? Do you have any specific rituals or environments that foster your creativity?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm always, it's a question I love to ask other artists because what I've always tried to do is just have as many different approaches as I can. Like I heard Redman would like pull his car over and jot down an idea no matter where he was, or there's other people, like Slug of Atmosphere, I feel like is just constantly writing like a program in the back of his head, and then he'll make it a point to sit down. I've tried, when I was making records like all the time or just had, basically before I had responsibilities to anybody but myself, I was writing constantly, had my little notebooks. Now with the phone, like writing down whatever cool patterns that would come to mind. What I always come back to is that at night, once whatever my responsibilities for the day are settled, like now when my wife and kids are asleep, if I've gotten all my work done, which I typically, do at an office anyway, but I'll just sit down and say, I'm going to write for an hour. And I don't really have I don't have like an end game that I'm trying to get out of it. I just want to throw on a beat, start writing. Sometimes if I'm working on a particular project, or for that matter, a particular song, I'll throw that beat on. I've got like my little YouTube playlist of instrumentals that always get me going, like the Beat Nuts Fried Chicken, OGC, The Storm, like there's just a couple instrumentals that are mad. I don't want to say simple, but very straightforward loops with nice BPMs that you can sort of work around.
Did you appreciate Wu-Tang's instrumental album?
Indeed, yeah.
I know a lot of people are upset about that, but I thought it was pretty banging.
Yeah. And then for a long time, I was so resistant to having recording set up at my, then apartments or whatever, and then eventually a house. And I would make it because I was like, when I go to record, it's going to make me, I didn't always have to pay for it, but I was like, if I'm leaving my house in the comfort of that, I'm going to have all my lyrics memorized. Like, I'm not going to show up and be like, let's, I'm not saying like once everything's laid down, I'm not going to try and do ad libs or, how fun everyone was. Like, I'm not going to show up with like these crazy ass bars that I can't, deliver without having to do a million takes and stuff like that. And then eventually Once I had kids and everything, I was like, I just don't have the time to do that. And I bought a setup. And then I was like, what the hell have I been doing the last 25 years? This is so much easier. Yeah. As I'm recording something, I'll lay down the track, lay down all like the sort of like pouring the concrete stuff that I would want to do. And then I'll give myself like 50 takes of just fucking around, trying different things. And, more often than not, at least one like insightful, funny thing will come out of that. And then sometimes like an entire verse that I'll just go rework. But to answer your question, I try to have as many different approaches as possible, but typically at night around 9:30, just make myself sit down and write for an hour before I go watch Andor or some stupid show that I'll never remember.
Well, that's good. Discipline is good, whether you're writing a book or writing songs, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, I've been a hip hop head for as long as I can remember now. And I always got like super into watching like Blaze battles and Scribble Jam and all that shit. And I know that you're a veteran of Scribble Jam. Can you speak on that experience at all? And what do you think the state of battle rap is like today?
So it's funny, man, because there was a point in the DMV when I was, I would say objectively, the best battle rapper for like a 3 or 4 year period. There was people that were as good as me, but there was nobody that beat me, more than like, certainly not more than I would beat them. And I don't say that to be braggadocious. I say it to make the larger point that then when I started going to Scribble Jam, I was like, oh shit, I'm good for DC, but I'm maybe like 50th in the fucking world right now. And I really kick myself for not having committed to just doing it once or twice, and then B, just spending, because I remember in 2003, I think it was the third or fourth time I'd gone, I lost in the second round to Rhyme Fest, and I thought clearly he beat me. But I remember thinking, damn, like there's, all these lines are popping in my head after the fact. I need to go home and spend a year, like at least once a month going to a battle and really preparing. Otherwise, what's the point of attempting to win this thing? Because you're not going to beat like the West Coast kids that, they battled all the time back home, and they were all incredibly talented. And so, my experience was I felt like I left a lot on the table and I have nobody to blame but myself. I would say of my career stuff, it's my biggest regret. I wouldn't say I didn't take it seriously. In some ways, I think I took it too seriously, was so intimidated by it. I didn't give it everything that I had to prepare for it. Now, that being the case, that's my own individual experience. But in terms of the bigger picture, man, what a awesome experience that was. Big ups to Mr. Dibbs and Kevin Beecham. Did you guys ever go to Scribble Jam? Like, did you experience it or?
No, I only did like tiny hometown battle shit. Never.
Okay.
Or the big stage like that, man.
So I feel like, the best comparison that I'll have when I would talk to my dad about it was like, like the way people talk about Woodstock, except there was like 12 of them because, I think Woodstock was this thing where it was like, it sort of came together. And then the magic of the moment was that there wasn't all this pressure on it to be this incredible thing. I mean, the one way back, not the shit show, like 20 years ago.
Not the teenage angst.
Right. But by like 2001, 2002, Scribble Jam, again, people like Dibbs and Beecham, I hope they get the credit that they deserve. And my apologies for those I'm leaving out that were also involved in it. But, they had sponsors, they had thousands of people coming from all over the world for this event that, I wouldn't even say lived up to the hype, like it exceeded it. There was MC battles, breakdance battles. I mean, some of the DJ battles were just, absolutely mind-blowing. The breakdance battles, they even had a beatbox battle. And let's not forget, the whole thing was based around 4 days of people doing graffiti in different areas in Cincinnati. So, I would say that my own frustrations with myself is one small part of how I view Scribble Jam. It was just an incredible experience. Really got to meet. It's where I first met Sage. I'd known a bunch of the Rhyme Sayers people before that, but to go get to kick it with them. And then, all the homies that I've met, like from Albany, New York, from New Orleans, a bunch of people that I'm still friends with to this day was all through Scribble Jam. And there's a documentary coming out about it. I don't know if you've seen that floating around on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. But I hope I'm not in it because I never did great in the battle. To be perfectly honest.
It sounds like it was just a bunch of artists coming together with their own perspectives and different, outputs, different genres of expressing themselves.
Yeah, it was like it was kind of to that point too. It was kind of like, and when you look at the first 6 or 7 people that won the MC battle, they went on to have, particularly by independent rap music standards, commercial success, or like at least, maybe they didn't get signed to a major label, but they were able to tour and put out records and get distribution and things like that. Like it was kind of like a trade show at some point. I don't mean to flatten it that, and take the art out of it, but it really was a really cool environment where you could really go get, you could really pop off if you did well there. And I just have so much respect for the people that put it together. I know it was a lot of work. I don't know how, rewarded they felt in a commercial or financial sense, but I know that's not why they were doing it. And just again, I mean, Mr. Dibbs, he used to, I'm assuming you guys know who he is or some of your audience. Yeah.
Yep.
So like by the time I had opened, when I was in, as you mentioned, Educated Consumers, we had opened for Atmosphere a couple times when they came to DC, and Dibbs was the DJ. And I was like, that guy, like, I just feel like if I introduced myself, he'd beat the shit out of me. Right? But he turned out to be the nicest guy. I wouldn't want to cross him, but to see like the love and affection he had for an event like Scribble Jam, as the yin to the yang of like the personality that he had, it was, those kind of experiences were always really cool.
Very cool.
To piggyback off live performance, do you have a particular live performance, a tour that stands out as the most memorable or impactful for you personally? And if so, what made it so special?
Yeah, I'll give you two shows that were super special to me. The first one was there's a famous venue in DC called the 930 Club, and it holds about 1,800 people, maybe a little bit more than that, which by today's standards certainly is not like that big a thing. But it's almost like all the big bands that have ever played in DC, at some point they played at the 930 Club. And the first show I ever went to was J. Rue the Damager and the Roots at 930 Club. Yeah,
just
like
listened to J. Rue today.
Yeah. I saw that one of you guys posted one of the Afu Ra.
That was me, dude. I found that album the other day. I was like, fuck, this album slaps.
Yeah. So one, I was a huge Rhymesayers, still am, huge Atmosphere fan, and was able to work it out that we would open up for them when they were playing. This was right like during the God Loves Ugly, apex of that moment. And they were playing at the 930 Club. We got to open it up, like my hometown. And I'll never forget, my dad, it was the first time he'd ever seen me at a show. And I'd done, maybe like 100 shows. Like sometimes there was 2 people there, sometimes there was 80, but never like that. And he was like, "Are all your shows like this?" I was like, "Every one of them, Dad." And then I was like, "Can I keep borrowing some money?" He was like, "I thought your shows," because I was like, that's a separate issue, but but so, and then another one was another show, just a one-off that became an annual thing. There's a venue in Maryland called the Strathmore Orchestra Hall. And it's an interesting plot of land because that entire area was donated by, I think her name was Lady Strathmore. So there's the orchestral hall where like the Philharmonic will play. And then annexed to the orchestral hall is a mansion where she lived. And there was a group of people that were, his name was Matt Campbell. I can't remember I think he must have been through the Strathmore, the organization. But he said, we want to start booking shows at the mansion. Holds about 200 people, and Educated Consumers has a good following. We were the first rap act that they booked, and we sold it out 3 years in a row, which was, just one of those things where it was like, again, like all my homies that would come out, I wasn't like, this is a pay to play situation. I was like, if you come out, like you're going to have a good time. There'll be a bunch of people there. We made good money doing it. I was able to bring in acts from all over the place, including like an OG from DC named Kokai that I've always liked. I was able to facilitate doing a lot of the kind of performances with other acts that I'd wanted to do at bigger venues in DC, but made it happen in my own backyard. So that was really cool. And that was 3 years in a row we sold it out. My favorite tour was eventually we caught on with Eyedea and Abilities, and we toured with them a handful of times. And so I'll tell you a funny story. Are you guys, you're not based in Boston, right?
No, New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut. Well, New England in general, I guess.
New England. I mean, in the way that Maryland and Virginia are the same place, kind of similar. So we were playing in Boston with Inabilities, and I had this one part of the set where I would hold up a sign, and it had like 3, prompts that I would have for the crowd. I think I'm the first performer to ever do that. Hold up a sign.
Do you remember where it was by chance?
It wasn't the middle. Was it the Middle East?
Middle East or the Roxy probably the Middle East. Middle East is a good club.
Yeah, it was the Middle East. And so I had a buddy of mine that was at the show, big up to Blakesley. And so he's in the front row, and, we were a good group, and, our set sort of killing it. And I hold up the sign, and I'm like, yeah, here's what to do. And my friend Blakesley's like, yeah, flip it, man. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking flip it. I'm gonna flip it. And then after the set, he was like, I was telling you to flip the sign over. You had the blank white face on the crowd.
I thought I was thinking you had a second message on the other side.
Nah, so, and those kind of things like that, I really enjoyed. Certainly in the moment, I was like, God damn it. But,
but if you were in the front row with them, most people in the crowd saw it.
Right.
Unless it was upside down.
Right. I should have just stood upside down, But, that was one moment of many with the homies. They were, obviously their talent speaks for themselves, but great people, always had fun with them. So my best memories of tour are definitely with them.
That's dope. I remember we played the Middle East once, and I walked in there, and I walked downstairs, and the place was packed. And I was like, oh, my God, this is going to be fucking sick. And they're like, oh, no, you're upstairs. We played in front of like 15, 20 people. It's still pretty cool, but,
Now, were you like the opening act, or were you headlining for somebody?
We were actually the headline upstairs, but this is back when we were doing original music. This was Ryan's favorite band, Solid 8.
Okay.
I can see how our eons from Babylon.
Some of the best musicians I've ever played with. We had to play CBGBs too. It was cool.
That's awesome. So was it like a band or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Full live band. Yeah.
Was it rap?
Yes. Yeah. It was like kind of like Chili Peppers-esque, but more rap.
They were good. They were pretty good. But the other fucking singer in his band was a douchebag.
They were all kind of douchebags.
Let's be honest. All front men are douchebags, myself included.
Yeah.
I mean, not me though. I'm really
not you.
Just the one outlier for sure.
Right.
And so, I know you make a fucking ton of music, man. I mean, I've been bumping your shit. I think I found your shit, like, I want to say maybe February of last year.
Okay.
And I mean, I listen to it all the time. I listen to it at work and shit. Like, people are,
thanks, man.
Don't thank you for the music. What do you do when you hit a creative block, or you feel, you lack inspiration? Do you have any techniques or practices that help you get through that shit?
I mean, I'll be honest. I've never had a block. It's more, and to that point, I think that's what comes from discipline. I mean, there's certainly times where, like, I sat down to write, and the first 20 minutes, I'm like, this is some dog shit. Like, what are you doing? You need to hang it up. And then you just sort of, I always call it blood from stone. You just keep, maybe you throw the rock against the wall. Maybe you just chip away at it, with your fingernails. But I think if you keep working on the stone, eventually some blood will come out, and then you can, I don't know where to go with this metaphor. You can form into like a blood person. I don't know. But the problem that I have, and it's a good problem to have, was, I was, up until I was about 35, I'd have relationships, and I've always had a steady job. But my main focus was music. And that was very apparent to all the people who I disappointed over the years, emotionally and financially. So I didn't have to, it wasn't even a thing for me to sit down, and write or make, or, go record and stuff. I used to go to, when I was in college, I used to say it all the time, like, the only reason I go to class is so I can write raps. Like, a couple years ago, I got a pretty intense job that I really enjoy, but between that and my wife and kids, I just don't have I'm not going to say the free time that I used to. I just allocate more my time more towards, the stuff that I feel, I don't want to say I have to do. Like like I'd like for my children to eat, so like there are things that I want to do, but there was a point during, the lockdown where I was like, all right, well, my wife and kids are sick of me. So now I have time. I can go downstairs. And this was shortly after I joined Strange Famous and got beats from Orpheus, based out of London, and very quickly put together an album called Cancel the Guillotine. I hit up this guy named Speaks because I was like, I want to work on the second With album. That's what came out earlier this year. When I was home and my loved ones were tired of me, that's when I had the free time to be creative. I don't have that, but then there's times like on my way into work, I'm like, instead of listening to your 10th sports podcast today, you could throw on some instrumentals and start writing. And so I'm pretty disciplined about it, but in terms of hitting writer's block or a break, it's more just time management for me.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Like I was the same way. Like I'd be done writing my rhyme like 2 days before everybody else. I'm like, you guys ready to go? Huh? You ready? But turns out not everybody writes like that.
Right. That's to that point. I'm definitely like a plays well with others kind of person, but like in spurts, I want the beat. I want me to be doing the writing. And I've certainly worked a lot with my homie K Chromosome. He and I have written together quite a bit. But again, that was before we had all these damn obligations dragging us down.
And families.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, that With album is pretty dope.
Thank you.
You talked about joining Strange Famous Records. We're all huge fans of Sage. Obviously, we interviewed him. How did you come to be signed home? Tell us the story, man. So
there's a homie of mine named Artemis, based out of DC, and we would link up and hang out, and he'd show me some really cool shit. And then the same night, he showed me Scribble Jam and Sage Francis. This maybe it was like 2000, 2001. But, in the same way that like the first time I heard a Micah 9 sentence, not even a full bar, I was like, I will always listen to what this person has to say. This person's incredible. Same thing with Sage. Like I think it was Sick of Waiting Tables, whichever. It was the one that had the original picture of his face with the crazy facial hair. I was just locked in. I was like, this guy sounds like what I would want to sound like, as an MC. And then as I got older, and like Slug says, like, thank God I finally found myself after my influences, blah, blah, blah. So, but with Sage, I was always like, I'd love to link up with this guy. And it was interesting because with Educated Consumers, I can't remember exactly how. I think maybe I'd reached out to somebody at Rhymesayers, but like we opened for every Rhymesayers show in the DC and Baltimore area for like a 2 or 3 year stretch in the early 2000s. But for some reason, I don't know if I'd ever reached out to Sage. It just didn't happen that we would be the opening act, but I'd be at all his shows. Like I remember going to the Audiobar and seeing him. I'm not sure before Scribble Jam, he knew who I was. And it was one of those things where it was like, once we crossed paths sort of parallel, and he's a lot further up the ladder than I ever was. But at that time, like eventually through Scribble Jam, he's like, oh, like I know who you are. Like, oh, I like Educated Consumers. And then at some point, I basically just went to him and was like, oh, now I'm remembering. All right. So Storm Davis, who runs the day-to-day operations of Strange Famous Records, he was in a group called Poorly Drawn People. Storm, based out of Providence, Rhode Island. When we were on tour with Educated Consumers, Poorly Drawn People was one of the other acts. Storm and I hit it off. And then once he started to run Strange Famous, he would talk to Sage about picking either Educated Consumers or me up. And it's funny because when I met my wife, I'd always sort of arbitrarily given myself to the age of 35 to like, not stop making music, but stop putting so much of my time and energy into it and frankly, money. And then once she and I got serious and got married, that's when Sage was like, hey, we're starting this digital subsidiary. So as opposed to you making a record and like us investing like tens of thousands of dollars or like, in merch and putting on tour, give us the record. We'll amplify it to 20,000 people that otherwise, you're not going to get to. and it was perfect because I was like, I don't have the time, you know, or the freedom because I'm pussy whipped, to go tour and stuff like that. So it worked out really well. There's always times where I think I wish I'd been more proactive about performing and then touring with Sage, because I think clearly, you know, in the mid 2000s, I would have benefited a lot from that. And I'd like to think he would have too.
What are you saying? You're getting too old for this shit?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I hear you. You work here. You give your best working years away to somebody that doesn't appreciate it most of the time.
Yeah,
man.
Well, I will say this, man, and it's funny because when I'll talk to people like you should have been more famous. I'm like, look, when people like Sage and Slug and Eyedea, and countless other people were 21, 22. And, maybe some of them didn't even give a second thought to having to rough it for a couple years to maybe, have a chance to make a living off of this. I was like, I had a really stable day job that had a lot of paid time off. And when I would go on tour, even if it was for 6 weeks, I was like, I'm not, I'm definitely going to make money while I'm on this tour, if anything, from my day job. Whereas I would see the hunger in all these other cats. You know what I mean? So like, I made my bet that I probably wouldn't make a career out of music and thus had a day job to fall back on. But I don't blame the soul sucking people that I've worked for, for the lack of success.
But you stuck with it, and you must have been discouraged, a few times. And
yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, it was.
So you believed in yourself and kept going.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, when Eyedea passed, rest in peace, for sure.
R.I.P.
That August, he passed in October of 2010, I believe. And that August, we had done a run of shows with, and, I just got to say, because it sounds like clearly you guys are familiar with them. Just this is a good one for your audience. So, Eyedea, wins the fucking Blaze Battle.
Hell yeah.
Rocksteady, putting out records, touring the world, does Carbon Carousel.
Way too soon, man. He would have been a household name.
Yeah.
He would have been huge.
And so to that point, he was absolutely huge in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so one summer, a friend of Educated Consumers contacted him. So she had moved out to Minneapolis, and she contacted him and was like, I know you've toured with these guys a couple of times. Would you be willing to do 3 shows in 5 days so they can get an idea of whether or not they want to move out here? And Eyedea was like, yeah, I've got like these other side projects that I could do, like Face Candy, which eventually put out a couple records, Puppy Dogs and Ice Cream. And he was like, yo, tell him to come stay at my house. I'll do 3 shows in 5 days. And, when you say he's big, like he was huge in Minneapolis, for him to be that, I just do it on the humble, just looking out for us was really cool.
Amazing.
And so the shows went well, and I was looking into moving out I became friendly with his mom, Kathy. She and I are still cool to this day. And I remember talking to her. I was like, I want to move out here. And then, so when he passed that October, that I would say, not creatively, but that's when I was like, okay, like in terms of the loss, this is devastating. And then maybe I was coping with that loss by like masking the emotion, being like, now I got to figure out what I'm doing with my rap career, and at that point I was like, I'm too old to basically be starting over, which, kind of another excuse, sort of like the day job. I was like, no, I probably should have moved. Like,
you're not the only one that thinks so. Like,
did that documentary ever come out about him?
Yeah. The World Has No Idea.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I remember it was like impossible to find for me. I remember I was trying to find it.
Well, yeah, that's its own thing. We actually, to that point, so the Idea and Abilities manager was a guy named Brady O'Rourke, and he was running Mike's Eydea's label, Crusty Recordings. And so Brady organized a tour of The World Has No Idea whenever that came out. I can't remember. So anyway, one of the shows was at DC, and it was the release party for the first With. And so like I hosted that show at a cool venue called DC9. The documentary, I mean, I'll never forget, there was like that place probably held about 250 people. There was 257,
Yeah.
asked, it was completely packed.
Tell the fire marshal.
Yes, indeed. So I'm not sure why it's hard to find, but I do know it was out there. I do remember seeing it and it getting a really good reception.
I just remember those Blaze battles. Those Blaze battles were fucking epic.
He was amazing. He was 16.
It's a talent, maybe, like a lyrical genius. Like he just, I don't know how you could do that in freestyle, and I don't know. His mind worked in a different way.
That's a great way to put it. It was one thing I really value having got to experience was seeing him, like in his late 20s, where that genius was like, I think By the Throat was just the absolute pinnacle, of what he was able to do as not just as a lyricist, but a vocalist, and the ideas that he had for the videos. And, I can't sit here and act like abilities, he was the homie too. Actually saw him a couple weeks ago when he was in DC with Brother Ali, and just peace to him.
Nice.
But yeah, what the idea was, like, just hanging out with him, just talking. We, doing prank calls. I was like, yo, like, this guy is, like on another level. And he wasn't an asshole about it, but he also wasn't a pushover about it. If that makes sense. He wasn't like fake humble, but he also
sounds like he was a character.
Yeah. He was one of those guys that was the rare everyman, but also like a super fucking genius.
That Samuel Jackson sample he had on the All of Our Heart album was fucking epic.
Yeah.
All right. Now you've built a pretty dedicated fan base over the years. How do you cultivate that connection with your listeners, and what role do they play in motivating your work?
I've always been upfront that when I was about 20, I just had this goal in mind of, I want to, by the time my career, whatever you want to call it, is done, if somebody were to sit down with my catalog, I'd like them to say, I can't believe this wide variety of style and this quantity all came from one person. So there's been some stuff that I've done, like Cruel Fuel and Canceled the Guillotine, which were like, I was like, I'm just getting artsy as fuck out here, just I'm going to tear down any fencing, brick wall, any, atmosphere that I might have surrounding me. And I'm just going to float in space on this one. And if it's whack, I'm not going to release it, but I'm going to at least try it.
You think that's due to your harnessing and absorbing of other different styles and techniques and saying, hey, let me get creative with this?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because those are the times where I would say, oh, like I'm sounding a little, there's times where I'm writing a rap. I'm like, this sounds a little bit too much like so-and-so. So like, let me just scrap it or figure out a way to like get out of that little can that I've just put myself in. And so that's what I would do with the left stuff, but the left field stuff. But to that point, in terms of what an audience would like, I also always come back to doing something a lot more traditional. Like the Educated Consumer stuff was very traditional, anthemic, boom bap rap. That's what the producer TECK was. That was his lane. And I have a good voice to record, and like I can write good hooks and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it was simple or basic, but it was more that traditional style of rap. So I'll always come back to that after having done something weird. And
you're also a lot younger in your experience of technique.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to that point, in terms of technique, I view coming back and doing the more traditional stuff as like sharpening the sword, right? And then when I go out and do sort of the weirder stuff, like that's the battle where like I go out and just get the sword all bloody and stuff like that. So, being honest with an audience and saying, I'm going to try some weird shit. Like, I'm not saying you have to support all of it, but hope you like it. And if you don't, I'll always reward you with the more traditional stuff that I think the majority of people that listen to me like. I think the other thing, I used to do a podcast, big up to Chrome Bills, okay, Chromosome and Steve Bills, and when we did it like, at least once every 2 weeks. We got really good guests. It was high quality. Like, we knew we were honest with as you guys are, clearly.
I would say kind of like this one.
Right, kind of like this one. Well, to that point though, but then it got to eventually, I just had to tell them, I was like, look, like once our second kid came along, I had to pick up a part-time job in addition to my full-time job because my wife wanted to stay home. I was like, you guys know, like, depending on where you live, sometimes daycare, you might as well just have, one person getting two incomes.
Yeah.
And so
I hear that.
So I told her, I was like, yo, I don't have time for this shit. You know what I mean? Like, unless we're going to get sponsored or something like that. And I think being honest, in that vein with the audience, I remember saying it as opposed to just being like, 6 years from now, people are like, wait, what happened? Like, why did you stop doing it? So to answer your question, give the audience what they want, couch what you want as what they want, playing mind games with them, play hard to get, and then be honest about why you're leaving.
Awesome. Sheamus, go ahead, big guy.
So yeah, we talked about some of your amazing collaborations. Who is your favorite person to collaborate with, and any dream future collaborations?
Sure. So one of the when I was, like I said, met somebody that got me into rapping when I was in high school, at least showing me how to do it within like certain, confines isn't the right word, but like count bars and stuff like that. Before that, in my neighborhood, I met this kid named Max, who's a very talented beatboxer. And I mean, honestly, in terms of how good like Eyedea was at rapping and freestyling, as good as abilities is at scratching, at Sages, at being a showman, I think Max is that good at beatboxing. And so we walk around the neighborhood freestyling, and then eventually like he would do educated consumer shows. And then eventually he's the one who did Cruel Fuel, but it's all beatbox. And it's hard to explain that to people, on a record, because you're not seeing the visual, the visceral aspect of somebody making everything with their mouth. Right. So, although I guess that's what.
Imagine watching Police Academy without high.
Exactly. That can't be real.
So to collaborate with Hightower.
Yeah. So I've always liked working with Max because we've known each other since we were 12. He's more of like a free spirited, like, let's really, push the boundaries of art. And I'm like, it's gotta be lit. We gotta be on time, like it's gotta be 16 bars. And so I think we bring the best out of each other in that way. A dream collab for me would be, there's a guy named Gel from Anacon. So there's a group called Themselves. I've always liked Dose One as an MC, would love to work with him, but Gel in terms of production, is just, he uses, I don't know if he still uses it, but he started a long time ago using an SP1200, which I think has such a unique sound because of the same time, so JEL, that would be the one. I will say too, one of the records that came out on Strange Famous on SF Digi is called Even in Death. That was a project I started with a homie from Baltimore named Cubby Bear, who had a huge following. He and I came up at the same we were going to jump on Strange Famous at the same time. And then he got diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. And so when he and I had done a bunch of songs, and then they were sort of in the demo phase after he passed, a friend named DJ Cam One, peace to him, was able to get the computer, get all the files out. That was a dream collab because it was like, I wasn't sure it was going to happen because once
it's like MP3s or WAV files or whatever they were.
Yeah, it was very just, trying to get into the file naming convention, of somebody is hard enough, but like all the technical stuff. So that was a dream collab. It's called Even in Death. I think you guys would like that based on, I've listened to a bunch of your episodes, and from what it sounds like, the genres of music you guys are into, I think you'd really like Cubby's production style.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to check him out. It sounds familiar. I thought that maybe he was on Strange Famous, but it sounds like he didn't make it in time.
So yeah,
I was listening to this today. I just looked up the album. I was like, oh yeah, I just fucking listened to this today.
Okay, very cool.
I got a bunch of songs that are already liked on it. So yeah, nice work, man.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah,
and I didn't know that guy. I didn't know he passed away, man. That's fucking tragic. That's horrible.
Yeah, that's kind of that's kind of what the title track, Even to Death, is about. It's about Josh. That was a tough one. So
yeah, absolutely, I could definitely see that, man.
Oh man.
This is a final question from me. Thinking back to when you were first starting out, what's one piece of advice you wish you could give to your younger self about navigating the music world?
Be more assertive about what you want. So I remember one time when Educated Consumers had opened up for Brother Ali for like the third time in less than 2 years in DC. And Brother Ali was like, "What's up with y'all? Y'all are dope. Why aren't you out on the road?" And I said, "We're sort of waiting for somebody, from your crew to say, do you want to tour with these guys?" He's like, "No, don't do that. Contact Jay Bird, who was the tour manager for, a bunch of the acts, and say you want to go on the road." So I emailed Jay Bird, and he's the one who would like set us up with playing at the 930 Club. And so I thought it would be a formality. He was like, "Yeah, like we're not really looking for that right now." And what I always kick myself for not saying was like, "Look, I'll pay my own way to go to the shows. I'll fucking buy a ticket to get in there. I'll sell merch. I'll do everything short of like wiping someone's ass. Like I'll be down. And then after, a couple of times showing like that we're reliable, would you give us 20 minutes as the opening act?" I wish I kicked myself to do that. And then obviously after the second time at Scribble Jam where I didn't, do as well as I wanted to, I would have said, you get one more, year to practice and then you're going to come in and then that's it. So.
Well, Ollie's a
Right
fucking
on.
beast anyway, man.
He is, dude. I mean,
Yeah, he
just
is.
absolutely incredible.
So, outside of your musical endeavors, what personal interests or passions do you pursue that might surprise your fans? And do these outside interests ever influence your music?
I've always been a real sporty boy. I still play a lot of basketball. I used to play like 7 days a week, and now it's down to 2 if I'm lucky. But I know I've talked about it, on podcasts and stuff like that. I don't know if it would surprise anybody. Basically, I never shut the fuck up if like I hit a game winner. So, which I will say is pretty often. So a funny story about that.
Best friends are the friends that can talk shit and give each other.
Right. Yeah. Other than that, man, it's funny. Like, I feel like I'm pretty well read. I once had somebody describe me as like, some dudes are like a beer, some dudes are rum and coke. You're like a Long Island iced tea, but like all the different
everything.
shit. Yeah.
The Iron Man, they got it all in there.
Yeah. But to that point, like when it comes down to it, like I just want to sit and watch. I'm a big Chiefs fan. I just want to sit and watch Patrick Mahomes highlights on YouTube. Like I don't want to read a crazy book about Christianity versus Islam. Yeah, you notice how I brought it up? You're like real deep into the interview.
You said you're big into reading. You have any favorite series you read?
I spend so much goddamn time reading when I say the news, like I get tired of people being like, "Can you believe, dude, the guy on the left did this? Can you believe the guy on the right did that?" And I'm like,
tiresome.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, all right, well, I read the left and the right and listen to like I listen to the New York Times podcast in the morning and then Ben Shapiro in the afternoon and then read the Washington Post at night. Like I spend so much fucking time digesting all of the different bullshit siloed political views to try and find something in the middle that when it comes time to like reading a book, I'm like, oh my God. Like,
if only the extreme left or right spent as much time trying to meet in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. I read a lot from my day job too. So like when it comes time to reading, but there's a couple books, like I've got Frederick Douglass biography that's been sitting at my desk and I'll read like 10 pages a week. And I'm ashamed of myself for that.
Well, at least you're giving yourself an hour each night to
read and write,
keep evolving in your career and your skills.
I appreciate that.
I just a couple quick questions before I go real quick. I work with a lot of like 20 somethings, at my job. So, they know that I listen to fucking countless hours of hip hop at work. I have 5 hours all day.
What do you do?
I'm a chef.
Okay.
I'm a sous chef at the place that I work at. It's called Odd Fellows Tavern.
Okay.
And my wife and I bought a food truck last year. So now I'm a small business owner. We make fried chicken sandwiches and poutine. And
That's
we
cool.
got them Wisconsin curds, baby.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a chef, but so I listen to a lot of fucking music before we open, and people are always asking me what the fuck I'm listening to. Now, this has come up a lot. Motherfuckers saying, "Oh, check out this freestyle," and it's a guy reading from his phone. I'm like, he's not fucking freestyling. He's like, yeah, like he's not he's reading from his phone. It's like you can't write a freestyle. It's like, oh, yeah, you can. So, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this debate? Because I'm of a mind that's this bullshit.
It's called read styling, So I didn't address this when you asked me about the my thoughts on the battle scene. Look, I think as artists, and I've certainly been very guilty of this over the years, Max has always been good at calling me out on this, that like it's easy to forget in most of the environments that an artist is, there's an audience there. And, you know, like Taylor Swift, I don't think she gives a shit. Like if somebody is like, you didn't like the third song, like you wished I had played that eighth. Like, I don't think people like that care about it. But I think artists
can't please everybody.
Well, to that, that's the thing though. Like at some point, like artists at my level, or, you know, you got to please some of them. Right. So like, I think when people, you know, when it came to battling and people started doing the battles without beats and without freestyling and doing written, I never hated on it. Cause I was like, it's not what I would want to do in terms of battling, but like these people are fucking amazing. I mean, just to memorize that sheer volume of stuff, and then they'd weave in freestyles.
Yeah, I think freestyling or battle rap is a mix of them freestyling and a mix of shit they've tossed around their head or written.
Yeah, some of it, yeah. Some of it's legit freestyling though. For sure.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that they don't come up with stuff on the spot, but I'm just saying they fill it in with shit they've said, or they, that's just human nature. Of course, you're going to do that, especially when you're put on the spot.
Yeah, and if the audience likes it, I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. I'm not saying like pander to the audience, but if the audience is having a good time, that's kind of, you know, the point. That in terms of the people, you know, or in terms of people reading off of their phone, like it's not a freestyle, but like I'll watch like Benny the Butcher on, you know, there's all those different YouTube channels. I'm sort of spacing on which one. I think it's called like I-95 or something like that, where a DJ will have people come on and spit, and like they're obviously doing written. Some of them are reading off the phone. If it sounds good, I don't give a fuck. Like Benny the Butcher's whole approach to delivering his rhymes is it's deliberate and you can understand it.
Right. I don't care if you're freestyle or not. Like I'm just going to respect your rhyme or your talent.
Right.
It's good.
But if somebody's trying to play it off like that was off the head, I'm like, all right, why lie about it? You ain't got to lie to kick it, you know? So,
nah.
Well, clearly I'm just a crusty old asshole. And I'm like, no, it's not pure anymore.
I get where you're coming from. I always used to use this line in a battle where someone was playing it off like it was a freestyle. And I would say, I like how you got excited. That was a dope freestyle. How long it take to write it?
All right. My final question, and the final question of the night, sir, is do you in fact eat that crust? And what is your dream pizza looking like, baby?
All right. So my wife, she was like, oh, what's the podcast? So I was like, you going to eat that crust? She's like, you know, I always eat the pizza crust. What's the podcast called? So I would say that since I've been in a serious relationship and married, from the moment she and I met, we've been together. I don't think I've had a piece of pizza crust because I know better. I set it aside for her.
Leave the pizza bones for her?
I would indeed, but I would eat it if it were an option. You know, man, I'll tell you, I'm not into the Neapolitan pizza, like the sort of floppy stuff.
Okay.
Which again, like there, you know, there's plenty of food that I eat that I will readily admit is absolutely disgusting. Like everybody's got their taste. I like more of a firm, not graham crackery, but sort of getting there New York style, like that style.
Like a good undercarriage.
Yes, I need an undercarriage. I need a crunchy undercarriage.
So you do like the crust then?
I do, but I feel like, so my wife, her mom, her brother, they're all excellent cooks. They all like that Neapolitan style. I like more. I'll tell you what, man, this is, I might lose some points with you guys.
Oh no, come on, say
when
it.
Pizza Hut came out with the stuffed crust, I was all about that shit.
Bro, we love stuffed crust.
Okay, good.
We have a separate podcast called Stuffed Crust.
I love it. And then, you know, I'll say this. I get the impression that maybe pineapple is pineapple non grata here, if I may.
It's just Sheamus. Sheamus is the anti-pineapple guy.
I mean, pineapple and bacon, that's really what I'm working with. And I think black olives. Yeah, you know, I like
black olives.
I just think it'd be better with the bacon and the olives.
Yeah, Ryan and I saw Pineapple in the theater together. It was great.
What, Pineapple Express?
No, I'm joking.
Greg's being an asshole. All right, man. So you're the third fucking motherfucker to come on here and say, give me that pineapple, baby.
Woo! I guess it's topper.
It's the
best sweet and salty, baby. It's a sweet and salty.
Topping. And the black olives, that's a great That's a great call. Black olives are amazing.
See, that's
Unless
the thing
you're
is I don't like black olives. When Sage said it, I was like, God, now I have to leave the label. That's it.
Oh, shit. Oh, you don't? Okay.
But to that point, I like. There's plenty. Again, there's plenty of things that other people like that I don't like. That I fully understand it. Like I could see black olives in a nice Greek salad, but I don't know.
Sure.
Try them on a pizza. It's
I
excellent.
will. Okay. All right.
Potpourri is good. We all need to be different, express ourselves, and be a good, diverse world.
That's an excellent point.
We don't want to be a bunch of robots following the same shit.
Right.
Then we have no creativity.
Everything's computer. Buy a Tesla. No, okay, so that's it, man. We fucking it was a wonderful interview. We were honored to have you. I want to thank everybody for listening. You're all beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah, man. Seez Mics. It was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking this time. I know we're taking away from your creativity hour. You aren't writing anything when you're talking to us, but it was great, man. Hope to see you in the future or hear from you, talk again. And thanks to our listeners as well.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me on. And the next record I put out will be called This Would Have Come Out Sooner, except I was busy eating the crust.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Albums are excellent. I've had a blast listening to your stuff. So
thank you so much. That means a lot, and I appreciate you guys being accommodating.
So, Seez, do you want to promote anything, talk about anything coming out or anything going on?
Yeah, right now I'm in. I don't have anything coming out, but everything I do have is on Strange Famous Records. It's on all the streaming services under SEEZ MICS. I put out quite a few records since I joined Strange Famous. Before that, I had Cruel Fuel, which is sort of my magnum opus. I am working on a new record that will come out, I don't know, in the next year or so, with a guy named Height from Baltimore. Does some really cool stuff. But in lieu of checking out my stuff only, I encourage everybody to check out the new Black Liquid album, the new Orpheus album, the new Lee Reed album. Cast One's going to be putting stuff out. I know Sage will be putting some stuff out. Everything out of Strange Famous Records is just, you can't believe how everything is quality. It's almost like AI's making it, but it's not. It's actually people making it.
Dude, that Black Liquid album that came out blew me the fuck away, man.
He's so dope.
Oh
dope.
my God.
Yeah. If I had to pick one album to that point of mine to check out for your listeners who aren't familiar, there's an album I did called With SFR. Each song has another SFR MC. It's produced entirely by Speaks. And if you're more into the traditional boom bap style of hip hop, that's right up your alley.
yeah, it's a dope album.
Thank you.
All right, we're repping the You Run Podcast Network, so if you want to check us out, go there. Check out Seez Mics and the other Strange Famous artists at Strange Famous Records. And Seez, as you know, we end every show by saying, "In Crust we trust." So if you could please give us an "In Crust we trust," that would be amazing.
In Crust we trust.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone have a great night. And remember, in Crust we trust.
I fucked that one up, but the other one was good.
I thought it was fucking
That
fantastic.
was great, man.
I'll use AI to edit it. No
There we
worries.
go.
That was the 8, man.
This ends our podcast.
You get into this environment, it's like, yo, we don't care that you rap. Just enjoy the breakdancing, enjoy the DJ battle. When it's time for the MCs to shine, you're going to earn that. But for now, just hang back.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.